First, we're going to start off with on-chain funds and real-world assets, legal wrappers, custody, and disclosure. So we're standing on the edge of a new paradigm here, where the world's most innovative governance models meets the world's fastest intelligence. We're moving beyond conceptual pilots, institutional capitals flowing into on-chain funds and tokenized real-world assets, or RWAs, from US treasuries to private equity. But unlike native crypto, these assets come with a stack of off-chain legal baggage that cannot be ignored. Our experts are here to tackle the three pillars that govern this integration. First, legal wrappers. How do we use structures like special purpose vehicles, trusts, and fund agreements to give a blockchain token enforcement ownership rights over an asset in the physical world? Second, custody. Who holds the private keys for a fund's treasury? Who legally safeguards the off-chain real-world asset? And third, disclosure. How do we safely satisfy traditional investor protection rules like KYC, AML, and prospectus requirements while maintaining the transparency and efficiency of the blockchain? And so this is where code meets law. So please welcome our panel. It will be moderated by Alireza Siadat, who's from Deloitte, as well as 1inch, and he'll be guiding us through these interesting topics.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. It's fantastic to be here again, once again. Thank you to the organizers and everyone who made this possible. It's, I think, my fourth time being here. And it's always nice to be in Liechtenstein and in Vaduz to see like the, how was it Peter calling it? The birthplace of Mika?
The birthplace of crypto regulation.
Yeah, of crypto regulation in general. So I can just, agree to that. As I'm a German lawyer and I'm coming here quite often and a couple of projects. So before we go into the details, I say we do a quick round of introduction and we start ladies first. Marina, please, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for being the part of this panel, being the part of this summit. I'll present myself. I'm Marina Miushkovic. I'm working within Montenegro as a lawyer, and the main interest of mine so far will be the blockchain and how to expand it within the Montenegro. So lately I've been active in researching the legal wrappers, tokenization, what should be tokenized, what not, and what risk it allocates with itself.
Thank you.
I'll continue. Hello, everybody. My name is Jonas. I work for Binance. I look after the entity that manages the fiat on-off channels for Binance. Some global channels, but of course mostly focused on Europe. So my contribution here today will be mostly on how to get fiat money in and out so that you can buy real-world assets.
My name is Thomas Nägele. Besides being the president of the CCA, I'm also a lawyer. And I think the reason which I'm on this panel is because I wrote my PhD about tokenization. So that's obviously, for me, one of my main interests.
I'm Christian Labec. I'm co-founder of BlockSize, and we are one of the biggest decentralized Oracle node providers and validators. So whenever a new trend emerges in DeFi, we're the one to actually price the real-world assets sitting on-chain as a data publisher.
Yes, and I'm Alireza. I'm the moderator of this lovely panel. I'm a German-based lawyer and partner at Deloitte. I was doing a couple of things in crypto. And I was fortunate enough to do also projects with almost all of you, except for you, Marina. But maybe this is coming soon. And I would start with like looking into what does it really mean. I don't want to talk about buzzwords that much. I really want to talk about hands-on experience of you. And I would start with you, Thomas, first, because we did a nice project back in the days, and we tokenized some old-timer with some company together, and the company was coming from Germany, and they went to Liechtenstein to set up the wrapper, which is a Liechtenstein AG, to put the old-timer on their balance sheet, and then to tokenize that AG, and to offer it not just to the Liechtenstein investors, but to the whole European Economic Area through a prospectus, and then set up the whole ongoing trading platform in Germany. We did that project together. It is nothing confidential. You can look it up. So my first question goes to you, Thomas. Why would someone come to Liechtenstein and set up the tokenization of real-world assets? So what is so special about Liechtenstein? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the law you have in a token container model and what is needed to really to tokenize not just an old-timer, but you can tokenize money market funds, you can tokenize whatever you want. So explain a little bit about why Liechtenstein.
I think everybody who is in that room knows that Liechtenstein is a beautiful country, so that's enough reason to come here. But jokes aside, I think, and that Peter Kerstens referred to that in the morning when he said, MiCA is supervisory law, right? It's not solving the civil law issues you have to solve before you really allow tokenization to take off. You need to have a specific framework or at least check what is necessary in your legal frameworks, especially property law, to allow for tokenization. We started that journey in 2016 in Liechtenstein and analyzed our framework and said, okay, it's more than just supervisory law. And as you perfectly mentioned, that example you just mentioned is basically securitization. You set up an entity, an AG, and then you issue the shares, that's the tokenization part, you issue the shares in the form of token, right? And that's what everybody now talks about when they think of RWA, so real-world assets on chain, in most cases. But I think if you really want to foster innovation in that area and you want to have it way broader, the approach should be that you allow for direct tokenization of ownership, of IP rights, of almost any right. And we came up with that framework. That's what you said. This is the token container model. So in Liechtenstein, you cannot only tokenize the shares of your entity, you can also tokenize ownership rights for a physical object, for example, gold. And that is a very interesting question because now in Europe we have these discussions around what is an art and what is not an asset reference token. And if you tokenize, for example, 1 gram of gold, so the specific bar of gold with a serial number and an NFT is representing the ownership right, for me that's pretty clear, that's not an art, right? But MiCA only has the supervisory perspective on that, and you need to have the proper framework. And I think here you have it in force and in place with experience since 2020, which allows you to tokenize way more than just things you can actually do with putting it on a balance sheet. And I think that is where you really see in the future, maybe in 5, I had to learn to be patient, to be honest. I always said, like I said 5 years ago, in 5 years you will see that. Maybe it's 10 years, I don't know, maybe it's next year. But I think sooner or later, and you see a lot of other countries are now doing that. You see Qatar copy-pasting our model. You see other countries looking into that and already announcing it, that you need to have a tokenization framework. And I think that is the reason why you can do that in Europe with the supervisory part of MiCA, but the civil law you have only here at the moment.
I fully agree. I think MiCA, what we have is a regulation of the issuers and of the CAS, but not really the regulation of the tokenization itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. And besides the regulation, a little bit more some hands-on knowledge, what do we need to put like off-chain data on-chain? So, I mean, I can tell you, yes, I tokenize diamonds and you can see it on the blockchain, but what is needed and what did Liechtenstein do to solve this issue, to confirm that the data which is on-chain is really existing off-chain, yeah? Or the material. Yeah?
I'm very proud of everyone who is here after lunch, so I will not bore you. If you're interested in that topic, you can go to tokencontainermodel.com. I'm not trying to shill or whatever, but like that's my PhD, right? But what you have to do to answer your question specifically, you have to have that link between the real-world asset and the token. And that link has to be a very strong one. If you have the token, you should be able to enforce it against anyone. So if you tokenize your mobile phone, and I am the token holder of the ownership token of that phone, I have to be able to ask a court directly to say, oh, Alireza, hand it over to Thomas. Thomas is the civil law owner. That is what you actually should have, because then you don't need intermediaries, you don't need an SPV in between, you don't need a custodian. It's directly connected to that, and that's the holy grail, right? That has to be solved, and we have a solution in Liechtenstein, which is in force for years now, but it's at the starting point, right? We have to learn from others, and hopefully we share more. And I would love to learn what you're doing in Montenegro or what other people are doing in other countries, because that's how you evolve, right? You have to learn from each other and bring that to the next level.
Yeah. Before we go on with the legal knowledge, going back to the Oracle, to confirming or validating the data. I mean, what we understand is, okay, whatever you see on blockchain, no one can really change it. It's immutable. But before it comes on the chain, someone needs to validate the information. And I think there's where you and your team is coming in. Explain to us a little bit why is it so important to validate information, why we need oracles like what your company is doing. And I mean, I see you for a long time. I think we know each other for 6-7 years. And you're one of the first ones in this market. You were also in different markets, but especially in this validating of really important information. And so explain to us a little bit why it's so important to have a validator, Oracle, like what you're doing.
So what you were referring to is the so-called Oracle problem, okay? When you use a token on-chain and you want to use it as collateral, how does the platform knows what that token is worth? And it could be even Bitcoin, okay, sitting on-chain, or ETH, or wrapped ETH, okay? How do you know what that token is worth? Because it will, enforce liquidations, it will determine the loan to value, it will determine how much you can, borrow against that collateral, or it could be used as a reference rate for a perpetual future sitting on chain. And this is the Oracle problem, that, those on-chain assets, they don't know what the price off-chain is. And now you could easily just, pick block size as one provider and say, you price that asset. But that's not very robust because, it's subject to manipulation, it could be, and you don't want to certainly rely on just, one market data provider. And this is why, Chainlink came up with the first Oracle in 2020. And they have a so-called decentralized Oracle network where, for example, the BTC-USDC pair is being priced by 32 validators. They all publish that specific price of Bitcoin against USDC. And then they use an aggregate price, okay, so that you can be sure that the price that will be used in this entire DeFi ecosystem, and we have billions, okay, of US dollars sitting there, so it's also a lot of responsibility, is accurate, that it cannot be manipulated, and that people can actually trust the DeFi ecosystem. So data, off-chain data, is the backbone for any on-chain DeFi activity. And this is what we price. But we're just one of the Oracle nodes, okay? There are 31 other providers also providing a price, but it's essential for DeFi. And we've been privileged and lucky enough to see all of the trends coming and going since 2020. We've been one of the first Chainlink node operators. We've joined other oracles, and I can walk you a little bit through the history and give insights what is very, very interesting right now, where we do see challenges and how they will be tackled. So when you remember back in 2021, synthetic stocks, okay, they've been a big thing. So what they legally were, I have no idea. Probably you know, or don't even know. Maybe a CFD, okay? It was just a token sitting on the blockchain that was priced with some data they got from NASDAQ, for example. So you could trade Apple on chain. But the price was solely determined, okay, by some sort of oracle using the NASDAQ price. This is tricky. It's really tricky, I can tell you, to price off-chain stocks. Because one example is, how do you price that instrument when trading hours are closed? Okay? And for crypto, you want to have an aggregate price, in fact, across multiple venues, because liquidity is fragmented. For equities, in fact, you don't want to have an aggregated price or multiple trading venues. You want to have the price from the major trading venue, because this is where the liquidity sits. So the answer to the question, what is the fair and real price, is answered completely different, okay, compared to how you price crypto in fragmented liquidity markets. So this is one of the key challenges. Will trading hours be extended? Yes. Will you use other trading venues to determine the price? Tricky, because is this really where the liquidity sits, and is this an actual representation of the fair price? I think stocks are being explored pretty much right now, but 2021 was really, the hype, and this was where interest in tokenized stocks peaked. From a pricing perspective, I think until you have extended trading hours and really one venue that is capable of pricing stocks 24/7, it is tricky. Or you decide to fully and exclusively perform an IPO on-chain and have only on-chain trading venues and only prices on-chain, okay? Tricky. Then we had real estate, if you remember. Not so much.
Just one, Christian, I think for the audience that's very important. That's just to take that very small example. That's the whole difference between having a counterparty risk, because you have an issuer who then promises you to buy the stocks you want to have in a tokenized form, I completely have the full counterparty risk as the token holder there, or as you just said, if I have a fully digital IPO, the token is the share. And that's the whole difference of what I'm always saying, like RWA is not RWA. Like there's a completely different story to it. And you're tackling it from the pricing perspective, right? Which is true because risk has to be priced in, right? And that's fair, but it's very crucial that you differentiate between, it comes to the nitty-gritty details. If you have a token representing, like is issued by a company who then buys the stock, or you have really the native token being the shareholder rights, right?
Yeah.
And you have to somehow price that in, and that's important.
Yeah. I mean, to just close on that thought, yeah, so equities will be still tricky. Some problems needs to be resolved. What is highly sought after at the moment is T-bills, okay, treasury bills. Money market funds, because the rate is published once a day. Huge demand, high interest. This is really going through the roof. All of the oracles going into that space, and no surprise, commodities, right? So we've been asked to price uranium, for example, copper, all of those precious metals, and gold, of course, obviously. So this year we see two major, categories taking really off. That's T-bills, money market funds, and commodities. Stocks, not so much.
With this said, I'm looking over to you, Jonas. I mean, Binance is at the forefront of everything which happened with the blockchain, I would say, as one of the first and one of the biggest exchanges yet, but there's much more about it. I mean, I have seen that Binance was also the first one, like introducing Sharia-compliant products and stuff like that. What do you see when it comes to real-world assets, besides of T-bills, money market funds, and maybe old-timers? Is there something you see specifically? And also, the second part of my question, more related to what you're doing with payment and also the settlement of the payment. Do you think that putting, and this is the second reason why I think we're doing the real-world asset tokenization, do you think that the real-world asset tokenization and what is also now happening with DLT pilot regime and all of that, bringing more and more assets on-chain, is it going to solve the issue with atomic swaps, like T+1 settlement, that you can connect the both assets with the smart contract, and then you have delivery versus payment instant? Or do we need more to really, in the end of the day, to be able to pay, I don't know, our rent or pay someone? So maybe you go on both topics and explain a little bit from your perspective.
Yeah, so I'll start with the first one. Binance is the largest crypto exchange in the world. I think everybody here knows that. In terms of trading volume, we are now comparable to some of the large US exchanges. The market that is being created here is huge. It's a huge new market, and this huge new market is interesting for traditional finance. And I think I'll pick up from Christian, from what you said around where's the interest currently in the market, and money market funds and yield on your earnings is certainly one of the big major topics. Why is this so interesting for users in this crypto world? Because it's 24/7, it's instant, it's accessible, and it makes a financial instrument which previously wasn't accessible for everybody, very accessible to every investor around the world, 24/7 settlement. And if you trade it on a good exchange, then you can also cash it out 24/7, instant, real time. So right now, we see the products, the real-world asset products that we have on the exchange today are money market funds, and they are very, very successful. We've launched it about 6 months ago or something like this. It's giving good yield to people. It's a very, very interesting proposition, and it gives good accessibility. In general, today I see, and Thomas, I think this was the point that you made, today I see RWAs as a sort of representation of the TradFi worlds in the on-chain world. And I think this is where it's going to go much more native on-chain. I would have said 5 years too, but, but maybe 10 years. But the technology that we can do in this on-chain world is just so much better. It's 24/7 by birth. It's instant. It's global. This financial infrastructure is just so much better. There are so many more advantages. So I see it as currently sort of a wrapper of the TradFi world going into the on-chain world, and it's going to develop much more into a native on-chain ecosystem, hopefully also on the BNB chain. Yeah? And then in terms of what's important for people and what's important for users, and maybe I'll just finish on that thought quickly. I think for users, it's important to have an overall holistic idea and holistic good service. Yes, the idea is to trade tokenized stocks is great, but if you can't cash out your earnings, what's the point of it? Because the rent you still got to pay in euros, right? So it needs to be a sort of coherent ecosystem, and you need many, many different parts. Real-world asset is one. Certainly the fiat area that I work in or that I specialize in is one of the areas. And the whole exchange trading systems, another very different world. So it needs to be one ecosystem altogether.
Thank you, Jonas. Yeah, Marina, I'm very happy that you joined our panel. So you're going to be the last one of this panel to speak, but you also have the honor to close this panel. And I'm also happy that you also from the legal field and you are looking into the regulation of RWAs and you're advising some projects. So maybe you give us a little bit insight. What do you see? What is coming in a real-world assets tokenization? And what would you agree to Thomas saying that we need regulation on tokenization of real-world assets, or we don't need it, we just do whatever Mika is telling us to do?
We need more, not regulation, we need the property law framework.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will speak from the stance of Montenegro, as it's a small country, and I think we can do a parallel between the Montenegro and Liechtenstein. I started with the blockchain, and then I got inspired by the PhD book of Thomas, and it was actually what drove me to do a little bit more on the tokenization and what could be done from it within the Montenegro. But as we mentioned, I think every abstractive form that I came up to, it was like missing the regulation, actually, the lack of the proper regulation, the lack of the proper norms that kind of makes the markets also, because in Montenegro we had this gray area within the crypto markets and everything, so I would say people were not that I would say driven to use it, to research it, to be the part of it, and to see the potential of it. But lately, we've been seeing how the world is going on and what the USA has brought with the changes and everything. And I see the Montenegro is kind of started to investigate how we can use tokenized assets, especially when we talked about the real estate, which is a bit more complex area, but especially that is what shows us that we need specific proper framework that can allow us to, well, transfer the rights and to investigate how the tokens can help us in that transactions. For example, what I've been researching lately was actually the risk that are associated with tokens and how the lawyers within the Montenegro, which are not really familiar with this, I would say, legal doctrine actually, how they can understand what is behind the logic and all of this. Is the token itself the right, or it contains certain right? And well, just researching the token container model and comparing with Mika and how Mika kind of makes the categories of the tokens, it allows us to see where are the gaps. Montenegro so far doesn't have its own regulation, and we are actually, I would say, within the legal system of Montenegro, trying to find the best way to allocate these risks, but to find a way how to make it without burdensome. You know, some regulation can be robust and make some strict rules that will, I would say, overcome innovation within Montenegro as such a small country. But when you have the parallel as Liechtenstein, something that gives you the adoption in the civil rights area, that, you know, moves the lawyers also and moves lawyers thinking and how we can integrate it within the law. So lately, I think our mission was really how to tokenize real estate assets as something that is really a hot topic in Montenegro, being the touristic country, being the country that lives out the real estate industry, and how to compete on the global market. So basically to be represented not only in the Balkans, not only within our country, but to reach that global population and, well, be the one who, you know, set some game in all of this. But again, for all of that, what Thomas outlined before, we need a really specific regulation that will not obstruct that. And so far, I got challenged from many banks, actually, because they don't feel really comfortable within the new regulation. They're not familiar with it. So there is a gap in the education area also. We need the bankers, we need regulators, and investors also that can follow and understand this. So basically, it's not only just tokens and like moving between the ledgers. It's really what it can encompass itself in total, and also the potential of it. So basically, we are trying now to, in every project I've been part of, we are trying to find this balance to understand how we can, well, as I said, reach global market, but again, protect the Montenegrin infrastructure and protect the Montenegrin integrity with all of this. So hopefully, I think that sharing knowledge between the Liechtenstein and Montenegro would help to do that, but also let's be real and let's focus that there is some strict regulation that Mika brought up into us, and that we are in the plan to join the EU. So there is like these two sides. We want to make the global market, but again, we want to be fully compliant and be aligned with the EU mission and EU principles. So I believe there is a lot there to, update, to discuss, and to work within the Montenegro legal system. But so far, we don't have that framework, and that's what kind of allows us to work more.
I can actually extend an invitation to you now on stage. Whenever you're ready with the Montenegro container model, you can actually present it here on stage as a keynote.
Thankfully.
Would be an honor.
Greatly appreciated.
Yes, thank you, Marina. So we are almost done with our panel. I would like to thank you, Marina, the gentleman. So as a takeaway, we need oracles for the information off-chain to on-chain and validate them. We need better or appropriate regulation also from the international and global perspective. And we need an end-to-end solution for the users, not just to be on-chain, but also to get cash out off-chain. Thank you all. Thank you for listening to us, and have a nice day.